Street Talk with your host Reggie B. Come on, let's all join in. Free your voice, it's your choice, alright here. Oh, Simply Straight Talk.
Hey, Simply Straight Talk family. Welcome to the Simply Straight Talk Show, where every topic is a hot topic, and hot topics are all about that real talk. Now here's your host, Reggie.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Simply Straight Talk Show. This is your host, Reggie Maddox, man. I'm here to bring y'all some good topics, good discussion. I want to change it up a little bit. You know, we have not gotten to where we've had a discussion about the law. We just haven't. We have not had a discussion about the law. Now, we've had some general stuff that I posted on my blog that I talked about law enforcement, what was going on. I said, so why don't I do something with the podcast? The only thing about it is I sort of held off on this because I really wanted to bring something that was educational, but also something that kind of, what I'm hoping is that it makes people think, let me do a little research myself. Let me learn a little more about the law. And I want to try to give people an understanding of why you need to know the law. Why? Now, when people say you need to know the law, everybody goes to the point where they start thinking about, okay, but I'm not a lawyer. I'm not trying to be a lawyer. I'm not trying to be a paralegal. If I know somebody who knows the law, so I can just call them. But you can't depend on other people for the knowledge that you need to have yourself. Because if you get into a situation, you can't guarantee that that person is going to pick up the phone, that person is going to be ready to respond, that person is going to be willing to assist you. And you know, some people, when trouble comes, they vanish, they disappear. So that's why it's good for you to have this knowledge for yourself. It's important. And I think for a lot of people, having this knowledge, it'll really be able to help you if you know what laws you really need to kind of become familiar with. Because if you do get in a situation to where you do have to interact with the police or the legal system, you have a little bit of an understanding of what your rights are, how to apply your rights, how to use your rights, when to invoke your rights. Okay? So that's why I wanted to do this show. That's why I wanted to have this discussion. And depending on how this one go, if everybody likes this and it gets enough comments, then I am more than willing. What I want to do is get somebody who is an actual lawyer or somebody like that who doesn't mind donating some time. Keyword there, donating some time to where they want to come and just kind of talk about it, because I'm not looking to point fingers. I don't want to point fingers at citizens. I don't want to point fingers at the police. But before I did this, because I didn't want to do that, I wanted to point out some issues, but I also wanted to present some solutions. And the other thing is, I kind of wanted to bring it to the attention to where I'm hoping that some police officers will hear this and say, you know what? There are some things I can do that I may need to change that may help me to be better in my job, and also working with the members of the community in which I am hired and paid to protect and serve. On the other hand, I also want civilians, everyday people living in their communities, to gain some information from this, to understand, like, listen, how can I work with the police department? If I'm pulled over, what are my rights? How can I be respectful? How can I help the process go faster so we can both get on our way without any conflict? So that's what I want to do today. I want both sides to kind of see both sides, but I also want to say this. I am not sitting here saying that I am pro-police and that all police interactions are appropriate. All police interactions are handled properly. And I'm not here to say that all civilians are targeted by the police. Okay? So I'm being non-judgmental right now, but I do acknowledge that there are some serious flaws within the police department and how some police officers police. And there are some serious flaws within the community and how people act, behave. So it's on both sides. But I want to try to see if I can find some compromise and common ground that maybe people can kind of work together. Now, to start off, I want to tell you of the 3 amendments you really need to know, okay? You need to know these. First, you need to understand the First Amendment. I'm not saying you have to be a lawyer at it, but you need to understand the First Amendment and your rights under the First Amendment, okay? The First Amendment says Congress shall not make laws respecting an establishment or religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. That's the First Amendment. You have the right to express how you feel about the government. You have the right to protest. You have the right to gather. So you have the right of freedom of speech to say how you feel about things. That's the First Amendment. Now, I'm not going to leave it there. I'm going to come back to it in a minute. Well, hold on. Let me hit this real quick. Because here's the thing that a lot of people think that under the First Amendment they can do. They think that that means that they can get in somebody's face, start yelling and screaming and cursing. They feel like they can start threatening people. They feel like they can just be a bully and try to intimidate people. So some people think that that's what it means to express my First Amendment right. That I can yell at you in your face, scream at you, intimidate you, and bully you. No, that is not under the First Amendment. You do have the right to voice yourself, but you cannot be intimidating about it. You cannot be threatening about it. Standing 3 feet from somebody and saying how you feel, whether you're using vulgar language or not, that is totally up to you. You have the freedom of speech to say what you think about a governor, a politician, a police officer, somebody working in a store. You have the right to express how you feel, but you do not have the right to encroach upon a person's personal space, get in their face, nose to nose, bumping them, okay, and yelling at them. That's something totally different. So be mindful about that. You can say how you want. You can say what you need to say. You can express yourself, but how you do it, you can lose your First Amendment right if you put your hands on somebody. You spit on somebody. And that just seems to be the thing people want to do right now. So be very careful about how the way you conduct yourself when you're expressing yourself. Okay? So that's what we saw. The First Amendment guarantees you the right to freedom of speech. Now, the Fourth Amendment, okay? The Fourth Amendment is the right of the people to be secure in their possessions, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So the reason you need to understand the Fourth Amendment is, what if the police say, I want to search your car? What if the police come to your house and say, I want to search your house? If they present you with a warrant, do you actually read the warrant to see what does it say they are allowed to search? What are they supposed to be searching? Because a lot of times when warrants are issued and they have not done their research very well, and you have a detached garage, if that is not listed on the warrant, they cannot search it. So the warrant has to be very clear about what they are being authorized to search. So if they approach you with a search warrant, you need to read it and look and see what is it they have been given permission to search. Is it the right address? There are times when they are going to some place to search a house and the address on the warrant is wrong. All that has to be accurate before they can search somebody's property. They can only search what they have been authorized to search by the warrant. If you're in your vehicle and the police want to search your vehicle and they don't have probable cause. Now, here's the thing. Okay. If you robbed a bank, okay, and they've been following you and pull you over, and they say, we're going to search the car. They have every right to search your car. Okay. So stop tripping. Don't try to use this to be stupid. Okay? Now, if you are driving and you run a red light, you pull over, you don't resist arrest. As always, when they walk by, they're going to touch the back tail light of your car. Okay, they always do it. They're going to touch it, leave their fingerprint there on the back part of your car, and then they're going to walk up to your car, and they're going to be looking in the back of your car. They're looking. They are looking. They're looking for drugs. They're looking for weapons. Now, some people say, they may ask, can we search your car? If they smell something, or if they feel like you came from a neighborhood that may have drugs. But if they don't have probable cause, they can't search unless there's a weapon, or you have to give them permission. And here's the thing. You have to be mindful. If you are driving down the street and there is a little bag of weed sitting there, okay, on the passenger side, and the cop on the passenger side sees that little bag of weed down there, they have a right to confiscate it because it is open. It is, it's an open view. It's visible. They can see it. So be mindful about that. So yes, they can confiscate it. Now you change the game. If you have a weapon sitting out, now you change the game. So you have to be mindful about your rights and understand what are your rights when it comes to the Fourth Amendment, and they saying they want to search. When can you decline a search? When do you have to submit to a search? So you need to know these things under the Fourth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment is one that I think people really don't understand and they don't take advantage of, because a lot of people think that the Fifth Amendment only applies in courts. Okay? But the Fifth Amendment protects individuals from being forced to incriminate themselves. Incriminating oneself is defined as exposing oneself or another person to an accusation or charge of a crime, or as involving oneself or another person in a criminal prosecution or the danger thereof. The privilege against compelled self-incrimination is defined as the constitutional right of a person to refuse to answer questions or otherwise give testimony about himself. A police officer pulls you over, or if a police officer just stops you for a casual conversation, unless you know the cop, you know the officer, 9 times out of 10, when an officer just stops you out of the blue, you don't know them, they don't know you, it's because they're kind of inquiring. So they're going to start asking questions. You live around here? Or where are you from? Oh, where you headed to now? This is a nice car. How long you had it? They're looking for information. They're looking to see if what is a consensual conversation between the two of you can lead into a Terry stop, which is an investigative detention, which means they now have reasonable suspicion that you either committed a crime, you was a part of a crime, or a crime is about to occur. So that is the purpose of sometimes them having these casual conversations with you that seem like nothing, but the questions they ask are kind of alluding to something where they're trying to either dispel that you are part or aware or were maybe, headed to commit a crime, or they're trying to confirm that, okay, this person is not, they're okay, they're not, whatever. So they're either trying to confirm or dispel the fact whether or not you was a part of a crime or participated in something. So that is why it is important to understand that there are certain things, you don't have to answer questions. When a cop pulls you over, he's asking you where you're going. You're not required to answer that. You're not required to share that information with him. If he asks you where you came from, you're not required to tell him. If he asks you how you're doing, you're not required to respond. Hey, I just pulled you over. Do you know how fast you was going? You're not required to answer that question. Put your cigarette out. That is not required. So these are the things you need to understand, that sometimes you do have the right to remain silent. You are not required to answer their questions. And a lot of people just start talking, because you got to remember, if something happens and you start to get into a little debate with this officer and he gets in his feelings and decides that, okay, you know what? Step out of the car. Everything is on his camera. So if you admit it, yeah, I was going 90 miles an hour. Yeah, I was where I don't know if I wasn't there at that store you talking about, because I just finished arguing with somebody else and she got on my nerves and he got on my nerves. We had a little altercation, so now I'm just going home. Now he has reasonable suspicion that something may have happened. So now the question, well, where was this person you was arguing at? Did it turn into a physical altercation? Where was it? So now you've opened the door for more questionings and gave him reasonable suspicion that a crime may have occurred. So that is why answering the questions that are directly related. If they pull you over for a traffic stop, the only thing they should be doing is either determining whether you're going to get a ticket or whether they're going to let you go. Now, let's flip it a little bit because we've talked about some of the things with the officers. But one thing I want to talk about also is how you react when you have an interaction with the officer. Because a lot of people feel, and I get it. I get it. You know, when a police car pulls up behind me, I'm on high alert. I'm on high alert. And there's some fear there. There is some fear. He may just be switching lanes because a quarter mile up, he's going to get into another turning lane that's to the left of me. But as long as that car is behind me, I have concerns. I don't feel safe. That's just the reality of it. You know, and like I said, I don't think all cops are bad. It's just one of those situations to where you have some cops out there that are doing bad things. And right now, everybody is being labeled in that same category. Everybody. Now, legislation just put out a executive order that policemen are now required that if they observe or witness one of their officers or an officer working with them on a scene acting inappropriately, they are mandated to report that officer and the actions of that officer. I think that's a good thing, but I think it's a sad thing that legislation had to put something out for them to do that. But like I said, on the other side, there are times when people automatically get into this fight mode or defense mode. Sometimes your behavior can cause a cop to get elevated. See, your job, just like cops are supposed to de-escalate a situation, when you see that cop walking up to your car, your mindset should be, I need to de-escalate whatever his mindset must be so where we can have a calm and civil exchange. Even if I'm refusing to answer any questions about where I'm going or where I came from or what I did, officer, can you please, share with me why I was pulled over? He says, well, I clocked you at 80 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour zone. Okay. Do you think you was going that fast? I prefer not to answer that question. Well, I'm just asking, were you speeding? Sir, I don't know. I can't answer that question. And the reason you don't, because if you say, yeah, I was speeding, that means you are admitting guilt. So here's the thing. And because put it like this, if you decide to go to court and contest that ticket, his body cam will show that you actually admitted to speeding. So you trying to say you weren't speeding, then on the body cam it says you were speeding. Think about it. So, but that's why I'm saying you can have a civil conversation with them. So even if that officer is coming up there with an attitude, you don't get an attitude. You remain civil. Now, I have been pulled over before. I was pulled over by a police officer, and this was a white police officer. We were both parked side by side at an intersection. I was in the lane to turn left. Him and another car was in the lane to go keep straight. Now, there were 4 signal lights above us. And I was looking down because it took a minute. So when I looked up out of my right eye, from my peripheral vision, I could see the light turn green. And I saw everybody going. I was like, oh, crap, let me go. But my lights were red. But my eye focus was on the lights on their side. I just saw that green light at the bottom half of the light pole. I said, oh, okay, my lights are green, let's go. And of course, I got halfway up. I see 2 blue lights flash on. I said, oh, crap, they need to pass me. Let me get over. They pull over behind me. So But when they got out, he wasn't trying to probe for questions. He wasn't like trying to like dive in. He was just simply like, hey, you ran a red light. Did you realize you ran a red light? And I was like, I don't think I said also the light was green. And I'm going to give this cop credit. I don't have his name, but he works with Frederick County. I'm going to give him credit. He said, well, I saw what happened. He says, when our light turned green, you actually, I guess, assumed that was your light. He said, the lights on your side, you have to wait till they turn green. And it was still red. He says, I'm not going to give you a ticket. He said, just kind of be mindful. He said, I saw what happened. He said, I don't think you ran it intentionally. He said, so, but just drive careful. And that was the end of it. I didn't get rude. I didn't have an attitude. I wasn't mad when he walked up. I was calm. He walked up calm. When he got to the car, he identified his name. He stated why they pulled me over. And that was it. He explained me what he saw. And even though and when I got out, I looked back, I did see there were two lights. For some reason, my mind was just somewhere else and I missed it. But that was a cop that could have had an attitude and said, I'm giving you a ticket. You ran that light, you saw we was right there beside you. You just trying to take advantage of the law. Are you just mad at police? You just trying to prove a point? He didn't do none of that. And honestly, I thought I had the green light. But like I said, that was the experience with that cop. I had another experience with another cop to where, he said I was speeding. I didn't think he said I was doing, it was the same situation. He said I was doing 80 in the 55. I didn't think I was doing 80 because I was going with the flow of traffic. As a matter of fact, other cars were passing me. So he pulled me over. I had my hands on the steering wheel and he said, can I see your license and registration? And I said, I'm going to take my right hand. I'm going to reach in my back pocket. That's where my wallet is and I'll pull it out. So I didn't pull it out. I said, I'm just going to open my wallet. I'm explaining to him my steps as I'm going by because I want him to know, like, hey, I'm not armed. I'm just trying to give you my driver's license like you asked. He says, listen, I'm not one of those gun-happy cops. I said, I understand that. I said, I'm just trying to make sure everything is okay. He got an attitude. Snatched the driver's license, ran back to his car. I'm giving you a ticket. I'm like, okay, I'm just trying to look out for my safety. Just like you don't know who you approaching when you walk up to a car. I don't know who you are when you walk up to my car. I don't know what type of day you had. I could be the one guy that you pull over and now you want to unleash your tension. But you see the difference in the two officers? You see the difference in the way they approach the situation? It's not about how the first guy simply, he didn't give me a ticket and the second guy did. It was the mannerism. It was the way the first guy handled the situation. His name, he identified, what the infraction was, told me what he saw, what he thought. I told him what I saw, what I thought. It was a calm, casual conversation between two adults. He determined that he was not going to give me a ticket. The other guy, if I was speeding, by all means, he had a right to give me a ticket. But his attitude drastically changed because I was actually identifying my movement, giving him and following his directions. But we're going to talk more about this as we keep going because there are some other things I want to share with you because I really think that we can find a way to work this out. So we'll be right back as we talk about policing the police and the community. We'll be back.
We'll be back with your host, Reggie, on Simply Straight Talk.
RM Viaging is a company based on life's journey and sharing life lessons with the world in the form of laughter and reflection, inspiring people to go after their dreams and not giving up on life. RM Viaging creates inspirational music and motivational speeches designed to motivate all age groups. Visit our website at www.rmviaging.com to hear samples of our music. You will also find motivational articles on our blog page titled New Life, New Mind Blog. We also have a weekly podcast hosted by Reggie called Simply Straight Talk, all on our website at www.rmviaging.com. Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now back to the show.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the second half of today's show. Today we're talking about policing the police and the community. Trying to figure out a way, man, to get a better understanding. I know this won't solve all of the problems, but at least if we can get everybody on somewhat of a similar page, maybe to ease some of the tension that we have between the police and the community. Now, I should have put this out at the beginning of the show. I am not a lawyer. I am not any type of a paralegal. This is not legal advice. I advise you, I'm giving you the foundation for where you can go and look up information so you will have a better understanding of your rights. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to explain that little disclaimer here in a little bit. But I want you to understand something, because somebody asked me, well, you know, when they say you got the right to remain silent, okay, that is under the Miranda rights. Now, once an officer has pretty much established that, you know, he has proof without a reasonable doubt that you committed a crime, then when they're in the process of stumbling, once they have proven that they have proof beyond a reasonable doubt that you have committed a crime, they should read you your Miranda rights if they are placing you under arrest. Okay? Now, when you are placed under arrest, they're going to read you Miranda rights, and you hear it all the time on TV. TV loves saying this. You have the right to remain silent. You have a right to eternity. If you refuse the da-da-da-da-da-da. But here's the thing. Your Miranda rights guarantees you two things: the right to remain silent and the right to an attorney. Now, here's the thing you need to remember about that. The right to remain silent, you can do that before the Miranda rights, okay? So if you get pulled over for a traffic stop, even if you're not under arrest, you have the right to remain silent. You do not have to answer questions about where you're going, what you're doing, where you get this car from, where you buy it from. You don't have to answer any of that, okay? Now, as soon as you invoke your right to remain silent, okay, now this is in regards to your Miranda right. Let's say you're in the process, you're going to get arrested. Okay, they're telling you that you're under arrest. Okay, now keep in mind, being detained just simply means they're holding you because they're investigating a possible crime. Okay, under arrest means they have proof beyond a reasonable doubt that you may have been a part or committed a crime. Okay, so that's two different things from being detained and being arrested. You can be detained with handcuffs and still not be under arrest. I know, but it's the truth. So just because you're in handcuffs does not mean you're under arrest. It means you are being detained. If you're going to booking, you're being arrested. Now, if an officer is asking you questions because they say we have proof beyond a reasonable doubt that you may have committed this crime or we believe you did this, you do have the right to remain silent. Now, once they read you your Miranda rights, okay, and you decide to invoke your rights to remain silent, all police questioning must stop. They cannot ask you any more questions. Your right is not specific to that one police officer who read you the Miranda rights. So law enforcement officers cannot say, oh, okay, well, he told me he want to invoke his right to remain silent. Let me have another investigator or interrogator come over here and start questioning him. No, it doesn't work like that. Once you invoke your right to remain silent, none of them can question you any further. If the police continue questioning you after you clearly invoke your right to remain silent, then this will be a violation of your Miranda rights, and any subsequent statements you make may not be used against you in court. So keep that in mind. All right? Keep that in mind. And most officers, I feel that once you say you're going to invoke your right to remain silent, they're going to back off. Because then it's just like, I will just take them to jail, let the lawyers deal with it. So, but that was just a question that came in for somebody. But here we go with some more. Now, here is some of the conflicts, because I've been kind of researching and looking up stuff and checking. Like I said, I've been holding off on this for probably about a good 8 months to a year because I really wanted to get a good vibe from what I'm seeing from police, what I'm seeing from citizens. Like I said, there are some bad police officers out there. There are some police officers who lack the moral and ethics to intervene when they see a officer acting inappropriately. There are some people out there within the community who are bad people. There are some people out there who also lack the moral ethics to actually stop or prevent somebody from committing a crime or alert police when someone is threatening to go kill somebody. So it's on both sides. If somebody tells you they're finna kill somebody and they grab their gun, they run out the house to go kill somebody, and you sit back and say, I ain't did it, then you're just as bad as the cops you say you hate that just killed somebody. So you're the same. Because a life has been taken that you could have prevented and that they could have prevented. Either way, it's bad. So now, let's get into this. What are some common things that I'm going to talk about some common signs and issues that I see between the police and the community that causes conflict whenever there's an interaction between the two. And number one is interpretations of the law. Because I have seen this on both sides. And thankfully now, there are some videos out there of some good cops who actually observed another officer who doesn't have a good understanding of the law and was about to initiate an arrest or detain somebody that was unlawful. And that officer said, let him go. There are officers who walked up and asked, hey, what's going on? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, I saw him standing over there and he walked to the front and he walked to the back. I asked him what his name was. He wouldn't give it to me. So he walked off. So I followed him. So I called it in. What was he doing? Well, he was just standing right there. Do you live here, sir? Yeah, he verified that he does live in there. Let him go. So you got some cops that got the common sense to do that. So interpretations of the law, and I kind of understand in some cases. Now, one of the biggest conflicts results when people say, I don't have to show my ID. Now, remember, I told you earlier in the show that there was something I wanted to kind of hold to later. And this is it. You need to be familiar with your state laws because the laws for Georgia, the laws for North Carolina, the laws for Maryland, the laws for California, the laws for Nevada, the laws for Texas, Louisiana, Alabama. What's up, Alabama? The laws are different when you get to the state. Although the Fifth, the First, and the Fourth Amendment, they protect you in certain areas, then you have individual laws that are different and vary from state to state. For instance, in North Carolina, if you're driving 5 miles under the speed limit, it is legal for a police officer to pull you over. They can pull you over. Whereas in other states, most states will not bother with that. Now, if the speed limit is 70 and you're driving 40, then yes, most states will pull you over because understandably, your slow driving could cause an accident. You're impeding traffic. You could be a possible hazard at driving such a slow speed. So you got to be mindful of that. So a lot of people today debate the fact of, I don't have to show you my ID. I don't have to provide you with identification. Now, I've looked at the laws for different states, and it's really, the law is so vague that it's not clear as to whether or not when a police officer approaches you and he asks you for identification, some laws require you that if a police officer asks you to for identification, that you are required to give your name, but it doesn't say you're required to give your photo ID. So that's why I say you need to know the laws for your state, because to me, a good way for the states to settle that is to simply update the law, amend the laws so that it says any individual pulled over for a traffic violation or who has been identified or suspected of a crime must present their ID when directed by a law enforcement officer. Okay? You pulled up for a traffic stop, you got to have get your driver's license up. Now, I understand that there are some cops out there who kind of abuse the whole ID thing. But then again, you got some cops who really just, listen, I saw you ran the red light. I pulled you over. Can you show me your ID? Or, they may have saw you do something. They want to ID you, and that's it. And they just want to go about their business. Okay, not you, let you go. But the problem arises is when people try to say it's illegal for you to ask me for my ID. It's really not. And like I say, the laws are so vague and they vary from state to state. So if you live in Georgia and you move to North Carolina, the laws may change. So whatever state you live in, you really need to get a clear understanding of what is the laws regarding in your state regarding presenting an ID when asked by a law enforcement officer. Personally, if you have not committed a crime, if you have nothing, to hide, just give them the ID. Now if they just walk up to you like, hey, give me your ID. It's like, okay, why? Don't be rude about it. But, if you can make the situation just go faster, just comply. Just comply. They want an ID, give them ID, especially if they're pulling you over. Or if they state this is the infraction or the reason I'm stopping you and asking you for your ID. But just random giving your ID, I can understand why people will say, no. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. The other thing is, and before I go to the next one, like I said, interpreting the laws. And sometimes a lot of the laws are so vague and so general because they don't want to limit police officers. So they make the laws very vague in general. So it's open to interpretation in 3 or 4 different ways. So then that's why you hear a lot of people going back instead of being able to say, well, look, this is the law when they get in court. Well, in the case of Madison versus the state or James versus this, they got to reference all these legal cases that took place before. But the bottom line is many of the laws are so vague in general that the interpretation of the law can be confusing. And I think it's confusing especially for new officers or officers who haven't been properly trained. It's confusing for the citizens who may have just overheard that this was the law and they haven't looked into it or researched it. So they think they're actually following the law or within the guidelines of the law, and they're actually not. So now you got the officer and the individual debating when they both could be wrong. But it's good when they got like a sergeant or more knowledgeable officer who is a balanced, non-biased person who comes in, observes the situation, and makes the best judgment as to like, listen, there's nothing here. Okay, somebody called in a trespass. They got reason to be here. They're not disturbing anybody. Let them go. Don't detain them any longer. Stop bothering them. And it's the same thing for citizens. It's like, you know what? You need information? Okay, what's going on? Especially when a police officer identifies why they are stopping you. I think that's the big thing. Somebody called in that there was a trespasser on the property. Sir, I live here. If you live there, just give me your driver's license with the ID. Da-da-da-da-da. Here's my ID. Here's my driver's license. Okay, can you read the address on there? Yep. Okay. Done. Go about your day. The next thing is egos and emotions. And I think this plays a part with the police, and it also plays a part with the citizens. It's hard because sometimes you can just left work. You had a bad day at work. You're not paying attention. You may not be focused. You may be going a little bit over the speed limit. You may have ran a red light, ran a stop sign, and all of a sudden, blue lights behind you, and you feel like your day is going to crap. This officer just stopped somebody up the street. He was going to get him a warning. They cursed him out, called him every name in the book. He drives down the street. Somebody flicks him off. Fuck the police. Okay. So now he's driving down the street and he's like, I really just want to go home. He sees you commit an infraction. He pulls you over. Now you got 2 people who never met, but yet because of the interactions you had previously, your emotions are now playing a part. So the first sign of the one person showing annoyance or an attitude stimulates the other person. Now you got 2 people, 2 negative sides, energies battling each other. And it happens. It happens. Sometimes it's not that it's a bad cop. It's not that it's a bad person. It's just the circumstances preceding their meeting has caused them to have a negative moment. And that those two negative energies are just pushing against each other at the time. And the thing about it is egos. There are times when a person can have an ego and feel they're above the law. They shouldn't get a ticket. And then you have cops who feel like, how we talking about a person wants to invoke their rights. He wants to ask questions. The person like, I don't want to ask questions. Answer your questions. Can you please just help me? Please identify the infraction, and let me know what you want to do. Are you going to give me a warning or are you going to write me a ticket? But I don't want to sit here and answer all your questions. So the cop may get an attitude. So why you want to answer my questions? Is there something wrong with me asking you where you're going or where you're coming from? What's the problem? So that's kind of like annoying the person. But then you may have a cop that comes up and like, listen, it's the end of my shift. Let me just give them a warning to let them know, because sometimes, just letting them know that they ran that red light or they're speeding, it'll kind of make them conscious, like to slow down so they don't get in an accident down the road. That's his mindset when he walks up to the car. But when he gets up to the car, hello, somebody, man, what do you want? Damn. What? Don't come out here with that bullshit. I ain't trying to hear it, man. Damn, I ain't trying to hear it. And the cop is like, okay, sir, the reason I pull you over, okay, what is it? Now you got a cop who had the initial instinct that he just wanted to give you a warning and send you on your way, versus now his mindset is, well, you want to be a dick about it, I'm just going to go ahead and write the ticket. So you see how a negative attitude from the community individual can have a bad impact versus the cop. And also the same thing. A cop with a negative attitude can have a bad influence on a good civilian. It's all about the approach sometimes. And sometimes it just makes a difference when both parties can understand or just take a deep breath. Before the cop gets out the car, take a deep breath. This is not the person that I dealt with an hour ago, 30 minutes ago. And that person sitting in the car, listen, this cop had nothing to do with the fact of what happened at my job. They got nothing to do with the fact that I'm arguing with my wife right now. Let me just take a deep breath. If I ran a red light, let me just get the ticket. I give him my driver's license, give him my registration, and that's it. And that's it. Don't put the negative energy from your previous experience on the person coming up to you. And that applies to the cop and to the officers. A cop can get an ego because he feels like, I'm a police officer, I got a badge, you should answer everything I say, you're defying me, you're obstructing justice. And that's what some of them will say. A person from the community can have an ego. Don't pull me over. You shouldn't be pulling me over. Go pull over somebody else. Go do something else. I'll pay your salary. Oh my God, I hate when people say that. But, it's two impacts. Egos and emotions often get in the way when it comes to police interaction. Both sides may have predetermined mindsets before they even speak. So that's something that the police officers and the individual need to understand. Check your egos, check your emotions, okay? Deal with the situation at hand, okay? Next, provoking tone and posture. And I think this is a big one. Some people just want to have this authoritative tone and just this provoking tone. The police officer comes up to the car and this person just got a nasty attitude. It's really sarcastic. It's just being a wise but sarcastic person. The cop is just, hey, how's it going today? Oh, well, it was fine until you pulled me over. It's just stuff like that. And the cop like, well, okay. Listen, I clocked you doing 95 miles per hour in a 70 miles per hour zone. Just want to make sure everything is okay. May I see your license and registration? You want to make sure everything is okay. You want here, man, just take it and go. Ain't like you got nothing better to do. It's stuff like that. That is a provoking tone. You're just having a tone that's unnecessary. And it can be the same thing for the police officer. How you approach them. you having like a sarcastic and arrogant tone, like one of the things I think cops need to get away from saying after you give somebody a ticket, here's your ticket. You can take it to a court. Have a nice day. Drive careful. It's almost like a sarcastic comment. It's almost like being a smart ass. You know what I'm saying? If you're going to give somebody a ticket and say, here's your ticket, here's the information. You have any questions for me? And the person says, no, I don't have any questions. All right, thank you. And go back to your car. That's it. Don't do the have a nice thing, because that comes off as a smart ass comment. And, it's just the little sarcastic stuff or in talking down to people or trying to be over authoritative or telling people what you will do that's really unlawful. On both sides, the community and the cops, you got to also check your tones, man. Check the sarcasm. Many people are anxious now. I know when I look in my rearview mirror, the first thing I'm trying to see is where that cop's hand is. If his hand is on his gun, now my heart's beating. Because I'm thinking this guy, and I'm looking like his hand is on his gun belt is unclipped. I'm like, okay, this is not good. And now I'm more tense. Because now I'm thinking this guy is ready to unload at the simplest thing, his posture. And the same for the person in the car. When you're sitting in the car and you got your hands on the steering wheel, you sitting there gripping it like you're angry, like you mad, you talking with your teeth and jaws all clenched tight. No, man. It all comes off as a sign of aggression. So you have to be mindful of these things. And I talked about my bad day is your bad day. And that's not true. You have to check yourself and remember that this person did not have anything to do with the day before my earlier activities of the day. Why I feel the way I feel. So you have to remember that. Like I said, I don't think all cops are bad. I don't think, all people are bad. And I really encourage the people, especially the black men, to really, really understand your rights as far as the First Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, and the Fourth Amendment, and understand when you can use these rights. They're not just for in court. A lot of people think that the First, Fifth, and Fourth Amendment, that when you talk about exercising your rights of the First, Fifth, and Fourth Amendment, a lot of people think that these only apply to court situations. No, they don't. They apply to any time as a citizen of the United States. You can invoke these rights. Now, keep in mind, the Fourth Amendment is applicable to search and seizures by law enforcement officers. It doesn't apply to hotel maids, like Walmart employees, places like that, Airbnbs, because unless they're operating under a government agency as an informant or something, then the Fourth Amendment will apply to them. But the Fourth Amendment gives you protection against search and seizures. The First Amendment gives you the right of freedom of speech. The Fifth Amendment gives you the right to invoke your silence. And it's important to understand that, you're not trying to be rude. You're not trying to be disrespectful, but you understand your rights. You understand the consequences of a police officer asking you questions that they may try to use against you later. Especially if it's a cop that's having a bad day. He's having a bad day. He wants to take somebody to jail. If you out there just running your mouth, you could be that person. But it's the same thing too. When you're dealing with the police, you don't have to curse at them. You don't have to be vulgar. You can politely say, officer, I respect you doing your job, but I prefer to invoke my right to just remain silent. Here's my driver's license. Here's my ID for the traffic. My driver's license registration for the traffic stop. There's no disrespect to you. And the cop can't get mad. And the important thing for that is when a person exercises their constitutional rights, police officers don't get an attitude. Don't get your ego get in the way. Don't get upset. You're supposed to, these are the same laws that you're supposed to be protecting people. And just as you want people to support you in your work, which I think we should support the police, we should support good policing of communities that keeps communities safe. I think a lot of police officers need training. I think we do need more diversity in police officers, in our police departments. I also think that there needs to be a system implemented to where police officers are actually gauged on the calls they receive. So if a police officer has been to two, if a police officer has been called to respond to two incidents that will get your adrenaline pumping, then he needs to be taken out of service for 20 minutes or even one. The supervisor or the sergeant needs to call that officer. Hey, how you doing? I'm doing fine. You're the first officer to ride to a reported gun shooting. Okay, you get there, shots were fired. Okay, you had to tussle somebody down to the ground. Your adrenaline is pumping. You do not need to be driving down the street going to get somebody a ticket. You need 30 to 40 minutes of downtime. Either that officer swaps out with another officer in a more quiet surroundings. He's taken out of calls for a few minutes. He's moved to the B partner to where he's not the first responder to a scene, but he needs time for his adrenaline to calm down before he interacts with the next person. Because some people can control their adrenaline. They can respond to something like that and they can actually okay, let me get it together. Some people, their adrenaline doesn't come down. So the more people they interact with, the more hyper their adrenaline gets. So I think there needs to be some downtime for police officers when they are dealing with high impact situations that's going to cause their adrenaline to spike. But these are the things that we need to think about. These are the things that we need to look at. Like I said, I'm not saying that there are not bad police officers out there. I'm not saying that police officers don't need more training in specific areas. I do believe that we got laws that need to be clarified that give clear distinctions of their rights and the rights of the citizens, not this vague general stuff. But I also feel like the community has to do more too in a way of making sure that we don't punish all police officers for those crappy cops that are out there in the uniform. Because I want you to check out a channel. It's called Audit the Audit. Audit the Audit is a YouTube channel. This guy's absolutely amazing. He takes different videos and police interaction from body cams, and he actually does a review of it, compares it to the state law for that area where it's taking place, and he actually gives the officer, the civilian, and everybody a grade. And I really respect this guy because he's very fair about how he does it. He doesn't try to bash the police officers, and you will find that there are some police officers out there who really do step in and try to correct a person, who try to actually say, like, listen, you might need to think about what you're doing because you didn't handle this right. You didn't do this right. I've seen where he's had videos where a police sergeant or a police commander walked on the scene, asked what was going on, let the guy go. Let him go. Let's go. Sir, have a good day. Let him go. They've ended the whole thing right there. So those type of police officers, we need to acknowledge. We need to recognize these cops. And these cops need to be training the younger guys so they understand what is your limits as a police officer. But as civilians and as citizens, we need to understand that we need to engage better with the police officers when we do have interactions. Be able to express yourself, invoke your rights, and do it in a respectful way without feeling like you have to curse people out, yell at them. Because when you do that, like I think I said it earlier, when they got their body cams on and you're sitting there yelling and screaming and cursing at them and you try to go to court, guess who looks like the bad guy? You do. Even though the officer may have been wrong and unlawful in some of his acts, the fact that you overreacted and your behavior was out of control, now you look like the bad guy. You look like the one that you provoked the officer. So that's why I say both sides need to be mindful of how they communicate with each other. That is community and policing, working together. And there needs to be some clarification, education Educate yourself on the law. Black men, educate yourself on your rights so you know how to do it articulately and you know how to do it calmly. And pick and choose your battles. Pick and choose your battles. If you haven't done anything wrong, you ain't got no warrants, you ain't got no records. They said, can I see your ID? Here you go. And that's all you got to do. Give me your ID. Where you headed? You wanted my ID, sir. I prefer not to answer any questions, but here's my ID. If you want to go run my ID to see if I got any warrants, which I don't, please go do so, sir. And the only thing he can do is come back and say, well, okay, you don't have any warrants. Thank you, sir. Am I being detained? And the officer can either say yes or no. If he's saying yes, he needs to have reasonable suspicion and tell you why he's detaining you. If he does not have reasonable suspicion to detain you, then you are free to go. If he says, no, you're not being detained. Okay, I'm going to leave now, sir. Have a good day. That's it. That's it. Pick and choose your battles. Pick and choose your battles. But I'm saying this, educate yourself on the First, Fifth, and Fourth Amendment so you know how to invoke your rights. But also, don't see all police officers as the enemy. Like I say, I'm not denying. Trust me, as a black man, I'm telling you, I recognize that there are some bad cops out there. Bad cops. But we do have some good cops. And unfortunately, a lot of those go under the radar because of the bad cops are getting all the press. Because now everybody got video cameras, everybody got dash cams. I carry a body camera with me because everybody wants to make sure that they go home. And I want you to make sure that you go home. I want to make sure that you understand your rights. I want to make sure that you know how to communicate effectively, courteously, you know what I'm saying? Calmly, any grievance you have with a police officer. And they should do the same to you. When a police officer can come up to you and say, hey, put it like this. I was waiting to play basketball one day, and I was parked in the back underneath the shade, and I was waiting on the fellas to show up so we can go play basketball. So some lady called the police and said that, I was I was taking pictures of her when I had my tablet on my steering wheel waiting. So the cop pulled up and she came flying up beside me and I just calmly looked up. I had my hands on the steering wheel and straight out of her mouth, she was like, sir, I'm so sorry. Somebody called and they said that you were sitting back here and it looked suspicious. And I said, ma'am, I'm actually just playing my tablet. I got my basketball right here. I said, I'm just waiting on my friend and we're going to play basketball. And she said, that's what I figured. Have a good day. And she pulled off. That was it. That was it. So being calm and being respectful, if she would have pulled off, I'd been like, oh, so why you over here? Do I look, if I start rounding off at the mouth, now I'm inciting the situation. I'm provoking her. She kept it simple and sweet. Simple and sweet. And for the police officers out there, it really does help when you approach somebody and you don't just say, well, you're suspicious. Because a person is not suspicious. A car is not suspicious. I've had a police officer tell me my car looked stolen. Like, what does your car look stolen look like? But he said my car looked stolen. It helps when you can reasonably articulate what you mean when you say a person is suspicious. Suspicious is a person's behavior. A car is not suspicious. The behavior of the person driving the car is suspicious. If the person is just going from side to side, weaving on the road, suspicious. They may be under the influence. A person walking around the store, taking pictures of security cameras at 2:00 in the morning, suspicious. So that's all I'm trying to say, man. I know this one ran a little bit longer, but I just wanted to share that. You know what I'm saying? Like, this ain't no haterism for the police. This ain't no haterism for no culture or community or race or gender. It's all about trying to understand the fact that with a little more education on both sides and a little less egos, less emotions, better understanding of the law. When officers approach, having a clear understanding of the law. If they don't understand the law, call a supervisor, call a senior officer who can give you clarification. And even for citizens, make sure that you understand the law in your community. If you don't get clarification, don't just start snapping off because you saw something on NCIS on TV and assume that that's the law. TV is made up, people. It is made up. Okay? But anyway, listen, y'all have a good day, man. I hope y'all enjoyed this. I wanted to do something that was a little bit different. And like I said, I've been waiting to do this for a while. I really want to do a lot more like this. But I just wanted to give people a little foundation for starting off and trying to start, just having some insight on dealing with law enforcement dealing with people, and as well as both sides trying to find that compromise where we just really educate each other. You know what I'm saying? And just being honest about the education, not giving a partial education as to what laws are and what's the right thing to do when a person is pulled over. Just educating yourself, educating each other. No egos, no emotions. Watch the tones, watch the posture. And you just remember, man, your bad day is not that cop's bad day. And cops, remember, your bad day is not that citizen bad day. It's 50-50, baby. It works both ways. Hey, thank y'all for checking out the show, man. I appreciate this. And I will catch y'all next Friday, baby. You know how we do it right here on the Simply Straight Talk Show.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Simply Straight Talk podcast. Make sure you visit our website at rmviagem.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Libsyn, SoundCloud, or Spotify, so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that will help us out too. Thank you, and see you next week.